What I say to some of my clients is that if you're not online, you don't exist. It's as simple as that. If I can't pick up my phone and look for your business and find you, then you're not findable in the real world.
Sure.
Right? Because I don't know how to get there. I don't know what products you make. I don't know what time you're open or close. So it's pivotal for businesses to be online, especially small businesses.
Yes. Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Maphale Moloi and welcome to the Ebozi show, where we have conversations with real trailblazing individuals who are doing amazing things in industry, really just to empower you, give you insights, give you inspiration and educate you on tools that you can use to grow yourself personally, but more importantly, grow your business. I am so excited by today's guest, a guy that I admire, that I've looked up to for the longest time. He is phenomenal, super smart. He has a business science honors degree in finance from the University of Cape Town. Also has a postgraduate diploma in business administration from the Gordon Institute of Business Science. His career is amazing. He started off at Unilever, where he was in category operations, then moved over to Tiger Brands, where he was a shopper and channel manager. He then moved over to SAB Miller, which obviously now has been taken over by Anheuser-Busch InBev, where he was a brand campaign manager. He has worked at Praekelt Consulting, and today he is the industry lead at Google, industry lead for media, telco, tech, and auto. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I present to you Maphale Moloi.
It's a lot of stuff to introduce, right?
I told you before we started that you're well accomplished. You've got a
Just makes you sound old, that's all.
well, you
Spend 5 minutes at each place.
No ways. But young guy, but thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Incredible honor. Like I said in the intro, we very particular about who we want to bring on the show. We want someone obviously who's young, but at the same time who's got pedigree and has a lot to offer. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. But I'm curious, how did you end up in this world? In this FMCG world, in this digital world where you did a business science degree in finance, and then you end up in the Unilevers and SABs and Tiger Brands of the world?
It sounds like it was all planned, but it wasn't.
Okay.
It's actually a very funny story because when I signed up at university, I was supposed to be studying philosophy and politics.
Philosophy and politics.
I spent about a week doing that, and I was like, this is not me. I went completely the opposite into business.
Okay.
And studied business science with the aim of becoming a CA.
Really?
3 years into that journey, auditing and me were not getting along very well. That's the only course I was like, I need to reassess my life right now. And I decided to actually continue with business science, but to specialize in finance instead of auditing.
Okay.
In my final year, I got the opportunity to go to Unilever to do an internship.
Okay.
And that was the fun thing. We're interested in consumers. We're like, let's go try this thing and see what it's about, find out a bit more about the company in the working world.
Okay.
I also did other internships at banks and etc. at that time, but the Unilever one was the most enjoyable one for me. So I ended up making my decision based on what I enjoyed doing instead of what my background was, what the plan was to study.
Sure. That's interesting. A lot of people who I know are more focused around where can I make the most money, where is the most security. It's rare that people follow what they enjoy. And I think there's a bit of magic in that, where when you do something you enjoy, you end up actually performing and yielding results. I
always say that when you do something you enjoy, when it gets hard, you know why you're doing it.
Okay.
That's the big thing. I mean, even with the stuff that I've studied with business science, as well as with the postgrad that I did at Gibbs, it was something I wanted to do. It took time out of work and out of personal life, but you make the sacrifices for things you enjoy. I probably would have made more money if I stayed in finance, to be very honest. But it's not about that. I think we're all running different races, and we need to do what makes us happy at that time.
Sure. Now, in the world of FMCG, in Unilever particularly, your introduction to the corporate world, and you're faced with consumer. You know, what are the things that come to mind in your early days that you can remember that really, even today, you can look back upon and they shape some of the decisions that you make?
There are two things that stick out.
Okay.
One was our consumer immersions, where we literally went to meet the people who used the brands that we were selling.
Okay.
Go to their houses,
Yeah.
spend time with them, really get to understand who these people are, and not just see them as consumers, but see
Sure.
them as people
Sure.
with lives, with families, with pressures that they're trying to navigate as well. The other thing was realizing that we're not always going to be the best proxy for the consumer, right?
Sure.
So understanding that you may have to put yourself in someone else's shoes rather than using all the information that you know personally to sell the products that you are trying to produce and market.
That's quite interesting because a lot of people apply it from a textbook perspective and they try to theorize, marketing and what brand building is. But your approach to really immerse yourself and allow the consumers to speak to you, I feel like that's a much more refreshing approach.
I mean, what is a brand? A brand is something that lives in consumers' minds. They make it up.
Okay.
They make up the value of it. They make up whether or not this is better than that one.
Sure.
So actually, if you don't understand the person who's making it up, you don't have a brand. You don't have a playing field.
Yeah.
It's like trying to play football and not having a pitch.
Sure.
Right? So effectively, the brands are made up in consumers' minds. So understanding the consumer is the first step before even building a brand.
What's interesting sometimes is how, organizations will have an idea of what a product is supposed to be. So, Vaseline, whatever product that people will use, petroleum jelly. But when you go to the people's houses, you'll find that they use them for all kinds of things that you traditionally were thought one way, but people use it another way. How important then is it for people to be able to adapt to those kinds of insights? Or is it a matter of sticking to your guns and saying, this is how you use it? Or is there room for some kind of flexibility?
There's always room for flexibility, I think. You have to test and learn. You have to hear what the consumers are saying and what people are saying about your brand.
Sure.
And how they use it is important. Not saying that you need to change your entire strategy because
Yeah.
people are using it in a certain way, but you need to understand that what you're saying is taken in a specific way.
Sure.
If you pretend that your brand is a person, it's probably the best way of articulating it, that you're out there saying one thing about yourself and people are taking out a different thing.
Yeah.
And that's all it is.
Sure.
It's understanding what people think of you,
Yeah.
which we don't always have as a feedback loop in companies.
Yeah.
We tend to build brands in isolation of the real world and forget that the person we're speaking to may not be just 18 to 35.
Yeah.
They may be 36. I mean, cheapest.
Sure. Yeah.
That's not the only thing.
That's quite interesting.
What we want to say isn't the only message that we can get out.
That you can get out. Because what the work we're trying to do is uplift a lot of businesses in townships and areas where traditionally there isn't a lot of resource for businesses to thrive in those areas. And we try and draw insights from people like yourselves who are making branding work for big organizations and trying to extract those learnings and see how other people can apply them. And the big challenge, when you speak about testing, it's like, I've got this brilliant idea and I think it can work, but have you tested it, which I think is quite important.
It's a big thing.
Because sometimes you have an idea and yes, it can work, but along the way you pivot.
Yeah.
Because consumers tell you that actually this is a much better way we feel we can use the product. But in terms of what you've seen, I mean, you've worked across a wide spectrum of different brands across different industries. What are the key things that you would tell a startup to say, if you're going to test the market or if you're going to think about building a brand, how would you go about doing it?
So the first thing I'd say is focusing on your consumer.
Okay.
Your loyal consumers, people who buy from you most frequently, are the biggest and most important data source.
Sure.
Right? They'll tell you what's working, what's not. They are in a market you can actually experiment on and try different things, and they wouldn't necessarily drop out. They want to be part of the business that you are mapping out and the journey that you're going on.
Sure.
So treat them as a valuable source of research and information.
That's quite powerful. Very counterintuitive in terms of what we're seeing in the marketplace, where a lot of people feel like they need to go wide. If I can sell to as many people as possible, then I have a chance of building a viable business. But what you're saying is that, especially when you're starting out, it's imperative to go deep. So know your consumer. And once you've gone deep and your consumer has told you what works and what doesn't, you're then in a better chance of building a replicable model.
New consumers are always attractive, but
Okay.
they're always the hardest to get. And we know this, right? Countless business studies have told you that it's easier to retain someone than it is to find someone new. So all I'm suggesting is retain the ones that you have, find out more about them so you can find people who are like them as well.
And what are some of the retention strategies? Am I constantly SMSing? Am I constantly WhatsApping? Am I constantly inboxing people? How do I make sure that I know who is buying from me? I know who affiliates with my brands, and how can I build this relationship with them?
So one big thing is recognition.
Okay.
So not necessarily the SMSs and pushing out messages, but actually just saying, we've seen that you bought most of your products from us, or you purchased from us for the last year. Would you be interested in giving us feedback?
Okay.
You know, starting that conversation and actually using the information that you have, that this person has bought X amount of products from you over this period, as leverage, because that makes you feel as if this business is actually paying attention to me
That makes a lot of
as
sense.
a customer.
Yeah.
And then from there, you start actually delving deeper. What are the things that you enjoy? What are the things you don't like? As far as even asking them to test things on your website, it's very, very possible for you to use that base of people to really shape and mold where your business goes and who your business starts to speak to.
Yeah, because what I see is a big push. You know, people want to get a message out there. I want people to know my brand, know who I am, and we're not taking the time to listen. You know, like branding, marketing, or sales, in its simplest term, is just a relationship. It's like a conversation that people are having.
Yeah.
You're telling me what you like, and I'm telling you how I can meet those.
Exactly.
I can meet those needs and requirements.
And once you know more about what I like, you can talk to me about what I like.
Yeah.
Right? If you knew I supported a specific soccer team,
Yes.
you wouldn't talk to me about a different soccer team. You talk to me about the team I support. It's small things like that that we do as people that
Yes.
we need to start getting our brands and organizations to do as companies.
Sure. And I mean, from the sounds of things, it doesn't sound massively expensive, because a lot of the time people feel like, man, I need to spend big bucks. I need to spend on billboards and be on TV and be on radio. But one, you can access people without necessarily investing in those media. And sometimes investing in that isn't necessarily the right thing for your business and for your brand. Where can people sort of draw the line to say, I'm starting out, I want to get my brand out there, but actually it makes more sense to have conversations? And then when does it make sense for, okay, I'm 3-4 years in the business now, how do I start having the right conversations with the right consumer on a much bigger scale?
So at the beginning, start with all the free tools.
Okay.
Literally, there's free Google
there's free
tools,
tools.
there's free, the internet is full of free educational tools, full of free listing tools that can help your business get out there. Something as simple as listing onto a Google Maps, for example, or Google Search is free.
Excuse the pun.
It is. It's quite funny.
Yeah.
But it is free, and
Sure.
consumers don't, and businesses don't necessarily know that, right? Exhaust all your free options first to make sure you're visible, both online and offline.
Yeah.
And then start looking at, okay, what can I do to get more people? But while you're doing that, understand why you're doing it and what you're saying to them. You're not going to have the right message for every single person.
Yes.
So because you're small at the beginning, use your existing base, mine that data, and then go find people like that.
Okay.
It might mean that you are going to the same groups that your customers, your current customers are going to. It may be that you're using your current customers as ambassadors.
Yes.
There's lots of different ways in which you can actually start to grow that influence without going to a billboard first.
Wow. Yeah, because it's interesting. I'm also in an entrepreneurial journey of sorts, and initially it was intimidating, you know, when you think about all these tools that are available, because I also thought it was expensive. I thought, man, to list on Google, to be able for people to find me on maps, to be able to access data that is available out there, I need to hire, you know, market researchers or spend money, you know, paying an agency to do it for me. But when you dive in, and you're like,
You can do
Google how to. Like, it's just like your world opens up. And for me, it speaks about this culture of learning that I feel is lacking.
Yeah.
You know, people want to do things, which is great, but they don't want to take the time to learn. You know, in your space where you've had to learn, I can imagine it, incredible rates in terms of moving from one industry to the other, from one company to the other. What kind of techniques and tools do you use to, you know, learn? And how do you embrace being in an uncomfortable position where you're the one that knows the least in the room?
That's always a comfortable position because you have to assume that you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So what I do is I use a lot of the online resources that we've got internally at the company, but also externally.
Okay.
So there's lots of free resources, and it's not just about listing, but also about learning.
Sure.
Because online marketing is difficult, right? It's difficult to navigate because it's different from what we're used to doing. But if you start with the consumer, you end up figuring out, okay, people do this.
Okay.
Maybe let me learn a bit more about what people are doing. Right? We have a saying that if you put the consumer first, everything else will follow.
Okay.
Right? And that's true of most businesses.
Sure.
What I would suggest is quarterly or every 6 months, make sure you're doing 1 or 2 online courses about an area that interests you and that can also lead to business success. Be it online marketing, could be about making videos, could be just about how does Google search work. It could be a whole host of things. And we've got things as Google, there's stuff from Udemy, there's a whole lot of other resources online that allow you to tap into this knowledge that's there. That are free. I think free is the main thing.
Free is the seller.
Let's start with free and then we'll work out
and
there.
We'll work from there.
I think the next step is also speaking to people in your industry and also people outside of your industry to find out what their challenges are.
Sure.
Once you know the challenges of other businesses, you can almost apply some of the solutions they've used to your problems as well. It might not seem like it's making sense, it might not answer your question directly, but what it does do is give you a wealth or a bank of knowledge rather that you can tap into to answer questions. So that's the way that you can continuously keep learning, keep asking questions, have people that you can speak to that are in your industry and external, and then learn from the free resources.
No, that's amazing. I like how it's comfortable for you to be the one that knows the least, because you're in a position where you can learn more.
Always ask. I mean, knowing the most puts you under pressure to actually lead everything. But you can lead everything by asking the right questions as well.
Sure.
Everyone's learning.
Then you're in a position to leverage from other people who actually might know a lot more than you thought you knew, which is humbling, but it's an area of growth. What I see a lot is how people in 2018, 2019 going forward, but what we've seen in 2018, we've spoken to a lot of businesses, and businesses that have been around for quite some time now, but they're not online. They don't have an email, like Gmail is free. They don't have any social media presence. Maybe they have Facebook that they opened in 2011. They don't even have a profile picture. What is the danger of being in business in this day and age, of not being online and not embracing some of the digital tools that we have available to us today that can help us learn and grow and build our businesses? What are the dangers in that?
What I say to some of my clients is that if you're not online, you don't exist. It's as simple as that. If I can't pick up my phone and look for your business and find you, then you're not findable in the real world.
Sure.
Right? Because I don't know how to get there. I don't know what products you make. I don't know what time you open or close. So it's pivotal for businesses to be online, especially small businesses.
Yes.
Right? And that could be a whole host of things. I think the idea around putting the consumer first and then figuring out what is my consumer doing or what do I do on a day-to-day basis to find companies or restaurants. If I'm looking for a restaurant, I'm going to go into search. So I need to be there as a business. I'm going to use maps. I need to be there as a business.
Yes.
Certain things that help me transact on a day-to-day basis will help other consumers, other people find my business. So I think it's just breaking it down into the simplest form and saying that you're selling to people what will help these people find me, what will they find useful, and using those digital tools to be there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I always tell my clients that, look at any relationship with your consumer as a marriage. All right. So don't ever look at it as transactional. Like, they're gonna buy from you from now and that's it. I'm gonna move on finally. Look at how you can court them and treat it as a marriage that you want to build over time. And the thing with marriage is that people not only fall in love with who you are now, but they fall in love with who you're becoming, because they need to walk the journey with you. So it's very, very important that you understand where the current climate is in terms of consumers, but where they're also going. And one thing that we're seeing, that everyone else is seeing, is just the explosion of mobile. All right. So it's not only just about laptops, iPads, and being online. It's just about utilizing just the power of the smartphone. And not a lot of people are tapping into that, into how you could really run a business from the palm of your hands. You know, in your space, what key learnings have you seen with people that are doing it well in terms of mobile, how they're using mobile, and in your experience in consulting, where are people also getting it wrong when they're using mobile incorrectly, that is actually to the detriment of their brands in the long term, and how could you advise those companies to actually, you know, realign and reconfigure to utilize mobile in a much more positive way?
I think it's twofold. The main thing for me is people need to understand that the majority of Africans are going to first go onto the internet using their mobile device. That's going to be your first interaction with the internet, right? Before a computer, before even a desktop or laptop, you're going to use mobile. So the majority of the internet has to be tailored to mobile.
Sure.
Right? And that means that when you're building your websites, you don't necessarily put the highest res image, but you put something that's really good on mobile so it loads a bit quicker. Right? That makes a difference to people's data costs and also makes a difference to how fast your site loads, which encourages people to actually stay there. Right? Small things like that make a big difference. What I try to do is whenever I've got a new web application or I've got a new web page that I'm looking at, I always look at it on my phone. And I encourage our clients also do the same thing. Sign things off on your phone because that's where people are going to see.
Build websites optimized for phone. Because traditionally websites are just built for PCs, desktop computers.
We sign them off on nice looking Mac screens at high res, and they look really great. But when it comes to your experience on the phone, it's not the same.
Sure.
And that's what you need to build for. You need to start here and then scale up.
Yeah. And obviously, as a business owner, you know, especially when you're in a position where you're growing, your role day to day is to make decisions. You know, you're making decisions around where to cut costs, where to invest, who to hire, who to fire. You know, is this right for my brand? Is this wrong for my brand? And historically, you'd need to go through all kinds of hoops and hurdles to make the right kind of decisions. But today, there is data available everywhere, you know, to help you make the right decisions, you know. Sometimes too much can be overwhelming. Like, Google Analytics, Google Trends, Facebook this, Facebook that. You know, what kind of advice would you give to, you know, a young guy who's thinking about building a laundromat in the middle of Soweto and is trying to figure out, you know, will this work? You know, what kind of data is there available and how do I actually tap into this?
Like you said, there's lots of data, and without a plan, you're going to just be stuck in the data, right?
Okay. Yeah.
What I always advise people to do is have a hypothesis when it comes to data.
Okay.
Have a stance and say, I want to test this thing.
Okay.
I want to find out this specific thing, right? And then do a little experiment, right? See how many people are actually using laundromats in general. See whether or not it would be a need in Soweto. See whether or not you're on a transport route, for example, where people can pick it up when they come back from work.
Yeah.
What are the times that you need to be open? So small things like that just come from observing and having a bit of a theory that you're going to test. You have to start with a theory, because if you don't, you're going to be trying to boil the ocean with the data, right?
Yeah.
You have all this information about all the trends and how things are growing and how things are not growing, but it doesn't necessarily apply to your business. So it's taking that as an inspiration, that high level, you know, this is what's happening in the market, but actually doing small tests on a local level to try and see whether or not what you're thinking is actually true.
Or 100%. One thing we're seeing is everybody's moving to tech. All right, it's tech this, it's tech that. There's a phrase that is coined that if you don't have an app, you don't have a business. Is that true?
Don't build an app. Don't do that, please.
Because everybody I meet that speaks to me about business, like, okay, cool, you have a business. Do you have an app? I'm like, but in my line of business, I don't really need an app, you know? And then I get nervous to be like, oh crap, do I actually maybe let me rethink this. What is your take in this world of a proliferation of apps that we're seeing every day, everywhere?
Don't build an app first. Don't do it.
Okay.
Start with the need, right? Start with your consumer, start with the need, and yes, be online. That doesn't necessarily mean have an app.
Okay.
Right? Having a presence online is as simple as having a website. It could be a social media page.
Yes.
Have a way in which people can find you.
Okay.
That's the main thing. The app is much further down, right? And that's more of a business thing where you found that maybe it's cheaper for you to transact using this tool versus a web page. But there's so many tools coming out all the time. There's things called progressive web apps, right?
Yes.
There's microsites that actually save onto your site, onto your browser,
yes.
and you can access them rather than using an app,
yes.
which saves space as well. Because also we're talking about apps, but we think people have unlimited data and unlimited space. They don't. Right? When your phone is full, it's full. Things got to go, and the apps are going to be the first things to go. Right? So I think really, really focus on your customer, what value you're adding, have the presence online. Right? You have to be in the, and not in the tech space necessarily, but you have to be online. You have to be visible.
Okay.
You have to be there for people to find you. It's like going to a store and not finding a product on the shelf, right?
Yes.
Even though you said, you've advertised, you've spoken about this product, but I can't find it. Online is effectively your shelf.
Your shelf.
Right? So be there. And then the apps and stuff will come. Okay. I think it'll come later on in the journey if there's a need, but there are lots of other workarounds, the progressive web apps, etc., that are cheaper and actually work on mobile as well. So those two things really do make a big difference to your experience.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. You know, listening to you talk, you're very calm, very well spoken, very knowledgeable, and you obviously have big responsibilities, you know. But I feel like you know who you are, you know, to an extent that allows you to not let things that are outside of your control sort of sway you and cause you to panic. You know, like you're speaking about apps and you're like, you know, start with the consumer. Know the need and then build accordingly, and then in the future it will come. It reminds me of something that was said by Simon Sinek in a TED Talks a long time ago. He's even written a book about it, about starting with why, you know, which is great for organizations. But my philosophy when I speak to entrepreneurs directly, I always tell them start with who, you know, because when you know the who, then the why will come, but the who will ground you, because you sell to yourself first, you brand yourself first, and from there you can build businesses because you are the first consumer.
Yep.
You are the first shopper. You are the first line of defense. So start with who, and then that will also enable you to utilize your insights. You know, as much as we don't know what we don't know, sometimes there's a lot that we know that we actually take for granted.
True.
You know, so I want to know from you personally, you know, the things that shape you, that shape your outlook. You know, how do you stay motivated? I'm sure there are days where you want to throw your laptop across the wall, but you wake up, you come back. You know, where can people draw on that grit, that resilience to just keep going and look internally first and then build from there?
That's an interesting question. I think when you start with the who, like you're saying, you can always ask the why, right? When you speak to other people, you can always figure out the why. Their why is always going to be different. You are going to eventually find your own why that motivates you. And I'm not going to say that a lot of my motivation comes from just me. It comes from my environment, definitely. The people I work with, people I interact with on a daily basis help ground me in myself. So that's family, that's my partner, that's everyone who's around me, right? And then you sort of figure it out and you question yourself. I think I question myself, and that comment about not being the smartest person in the room happens all the time. And I'm very comfortable with it, but that's how I learn.
Sure.
Right? I can't learn if I'm constantly the smartest person in the room. 100%. And I'm never going to be, right?
Yeah.
Things are evolving so fast in the world. So you have to have that humility to actually ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Is it sitting well with me? And is it going to get me where I'm going to go? Another thing that I do a lot of is planning.
Okay.
But I don't spend hours and days planning. But I mean, something as simple as a week plan.
Sure.
For the rest of the week. From Sunday night, say this is what I plan to do throughout the week. That way when I come into the office on Monday, I've got my 2 or 3 things per day that I know I need to achieve to get to the end of the week. And I might not get to all of them.
Yeah.
But at least I've got a bit of a vision.
Sure.
I think what we do is we spend months strategizing and not as many months implementing. And I once met a very, very good organizer of a huge event in South Africa, Maphale Moloi. And he said that they spend 2 weeks planning the event and 50 weeks implementing.
Sure.
Right? And the idea that you're chasing something and your plan will evolve, it'll change, means that you're able to see a North Star.
Sure.
If I start the week, or if I start without a plan, then I'm actually just going with what comes, right? Or taking it as it comes, rather. So I think the important thing is have a bit of a plan, be flexible with that plan. Know that your environment has a big impact on your own motivation and what you get out of your days. But at the end of the day, question yourself, be humble, learn, be open.
No, that's powerful. And that resonates so strongly with me because I used to suck at plans. I considered myself creative and I felt like, plans are going to stifle me. I just need space and let it come to me, But as soon as I started applying a bit of structure, say actually, I'm not achieving much because I'm always thinking about 3 years, 4 years, I've got time. But actually, when you say, what are the 3 big things I want to hit today, and start putting plans to hit those, next thing you have much more productive weeks, much more productive months, and it starts building from there. But sometimes you don't always get it right.
True.
You drop the ball there, you send an incorrect message to the incorrect client, you make mistakes. And for me, it's been one of my biggest challenge not to beat myself up every time I make a mistake, or every time I fail, or every time I drop the ball. But the more I research about big businesses and prominent people that have done well, the more this word failure comes up. Embracing failure. Failure is good. Failure means you're on the right track. What does failure mean to you?
I don't want to be successful. I don't want to be perfect. I want to fail. Like, it's experience, right?
Yeah.
It's having gone in thinking you know what you're doing, and then realizing, oh, wait a minute, what I thought isn't necessarily that, and then it's an opportunity to learn, and that happens everywhere, in conversations with friends, in work. So my approach to failure is, I still am a bit hard on myself. If you ask other people, I think I do take things pretty hard.
Okay.
But I give myself a day, right? If something big happens, you've got a day to be down, and then tomorrow you get up, and you have to be over it.
Okay.
Right? You have to push through, because if you don't, you're going to be stuck in that. But take the learnings out of it.
True. No, that's powerful. And another philosophy I advocate for is not only to learn from your mistakes, but learn from the mistakes of others and learn from the failures of others.
No one wants to talk about their failures, so it's difficult. You're always like, when have you failed? Never.
100%. But I look at brands like Nando's and the creative team behind Nando's that does a lot of their advertising and promotional campaigns. And anything that happens, whether it's social, whether it's political, in the economy, if anyone drops the ball, they pick it up, they run. Clever puns, and people just have associated with Nando's. And I just found that so powerful in terms of learning from other people's, it might not be failures, but it might be, areas where they said something they shouldn't have said, or, they've gone a direction where it caught everybody's attention. What's the best way, one, for you to ride a trend? So if something is trending online and you're seeing political news go one way, to associate your brand with that, because it's risky, where Julius Malema or Jacob Zuma or Cyril Ramaphosa says something and you see brands run to that just to get some airtime. I feel that it's risky, but is there a way for people to leverage that given the age that we live in?
I think if it's relevant to your customer base, to your people, yes, then I think you have the right to speak.
Okay.
A lot of the time we find brands and companies and even people involving themselves in conversations where they don't have the right to speak. They haven't built credibility in that field. People don't really associate them with that specific thing. So you find people who are in one industry commenting about something completely different, and then they're not credible, right? So you want to still be a credible source of information.
Sure.
So if it's relevant to your people and you have the right to speak, then by all means, go ahead and engage. But if you are doing it out of brand FOMO and you're seeing everyone else is doing it, like I also want to say something about Heritage Day or about Valentine's Day, you don't have to, right? Speaking the most or the loudest isn't necessarily the best thing.
100%.
Because you're not necessarily making the most sense, firstly, and also you look like a follower. You'll always look like a follower, right?
Okay.
Until you figure out what your key insight is or what your people actually value, then you shouldn't have the right to speak. You shouldn't speak in those situations.
It goes back to what we were speaking about earlier about, being true to yourself, true to your brand, and holding on to that truth, because there's a big sort of like there can be a lot of distractions and things that can entice you to be like, there's a big opportunity here. And we've seen big brands do it. You know, we've seen Coca-Cola try and make clothes. We've seen all kinds of things in the market. And, you know, when it comes to marketing, a guy that I follow a lot is Seth Godin. And he speaks about marketing being the saying. People like us do things like this. He defines the whole of marketing as that. People like us do things like this. And I found that quite refreshing, but at the same time challenging to say, okay, how do I know that I'm staying true to my brand, but at the same time not closing myself out to potential opportunities that exist out there to grow my business? You know, so do you have insights in terms of maybe companies that have stayed true, but at the same time, you know, maybe introduced other lines or other categories, but at the same time we know their values, we know who they are, we never get distracted, but they simultaneously able to grow somehow?
I think it's 100% possible for companies to still be grounded in what they believe and what they stand for, and expand into other categories. And we've seen a couple of examples of that globally, just in different products that they've come out with that are suited for the consumer, right? So one that comes to mind is Garmin. So Garmin is started off as the GPS company, right? They used to give us this little, you know, screens that we could direct ourselves with, and that market almost got taken up by smartphones, if you think about it. And now they've moved into, you know, personal accessories like the watches that allow us to track our runs, heart rate monitors, etc., which is a completely different use to, you know, navigation, but they're still so closely linked.
Sure. No, that's interesting, because it's inspiring to know that you can grow, but still stay true to who you are. Because there's always a risk that I'm going to lose myself if I'm just chasing other markets. But you can stay true, and people will see the truth. You know, sometimes people will tell you if you're going astray, because they're the judge of your brand and how true it is.
A local example of that is Discovery, where actually they're marketing to the same person. If you think about it, right? Someone who's health conscious, who's worried about, you know, getting the best and giving the best for their families, right? So they've got everything from medical aid. Now they're going into banking. They have insurance. These are all things that are financial, right? So it plays to their strengths in the financial sphere, but also plays to a key thing about their consumer base, is that this consumer base is willing to do something to get something. And that's the big thing with Discovery, right? So it's allowed them to branch out into as many different things as, you know, their financial licenses and abilities will allow them to. And who knows, they could actually branch out into even more things from there, right? But they've gained the trust that this is an organization that sticks to what they believe, right? They know their consumers, they care about their consumers, this is what they say. And also, they're able to know what this one consumer would need that they can provide, right? They're not trying to provide something that's completely out of their realm. They're not offering actual cars, right? They're not offering tires, they're not offering, you know, camera equipment. But what they are doing is giving consumers who are willing to live a healthier life or do something to reduce the risk, something back that they value.
And what's interesting also is, especially when it's a big player like Discovery, how other competitors respond to that. Because I worked in a bank, and when Discovery announced that it's going into banking, man, it rattled cages. Like, people were scared, you know, because of the potential threat that it has in terms of taking your market share and, you know, the risk that it has to your business top line, etc. And I think it's also important for competitors to know themselves, because it's easy for them to say, we're going to go for insurance now. They're coming after banking, but are you really an insurance player? You know, and will you be able to compete in that? And are you positioned for that? And when I look into like Spaza shops, Kokasi, and I asked them, what if McDonald's came here and said, we're going to sell kotas in the corner? You know, how do you respond to that? So you'd be like, you know what, I'm closing shop, can't compete with McDonald's. Can small players compete with big players? And if they can, is it similar products but cheaper? Is there a brand play? Is there a mixture? I mean, what can people do to make sure they stay alive for today, for the future, given the competitive threats that they see in the environment, especially from big players?
This is the age of disruption, right? So all of the big industries have been disrupted by smaller players. Everything from banking, insurance, and what they've capitalized on is a need that people had. Right? They understood the customers. They had a need that was different from what was being supplied in the industry. Right? It may be a trust thing if it was insurance, right? So there's some insurers that allow you to insure an item by taking a photo of it. Something as simple as that. So now I don't have to be online or on a call for a long time, giving all my details and to assess this risk. I don't know how it's calculated. There's so many different needs that people have that come out of existing industries. So small players are probably in the best position because they are closer to their customers and they understand their customers. Right? So if you understand the customer, what they like, what they don't like, it makes it a lot easier for you to provide them what they like or reduce what they don't like. And that's why big industries have been disrupted by small players that don't have, stores. That's, the age-old story of Uber. Same thing, disrupting an industry that didn't necessarily have a real value proposition, but giving it one. And a simple to get need that was answered by the company.
Sure.
So I think small players definitely have a role to play. I think, especially in South Africa, the big thing about small businesses is that they are still so close to the consumer that they hold a lot of cultural relevance that big organizations are struggling to get. Right? So how do you expand that? How do you create, a local ecosystem around you? You could partner with other people, right? So there's ways of disrupting and ways of making sure that your key differentiator or your key reason for existing is different and maintains your business for a longer time.
100%. And disruption is not necessarily tech.
No,
it's not
it's not an app.
Not an app. But it's a way of thinking that makes you much more nimble in a way that draws you that much more closer to the consumer at the end of the day, and keeps you relevant, not only for where the business is now, but for where it's headed in terms of trends you're seeing in the industry. But in terms of trends and tech, especially when we look at the fourth industrial revolution and we look at things like artificial intelligence and robots taking over, jobs.
They're not taking over.
Lawyers being obsolete, accountants being obsolete, bankers being obsolete. I mean, is it as scary as people make it out to be? Is there still a role to play for humans in building brands? Or are we all going to be taken over by robots?
I don't think we're going to be taken over by robots. I think what all this AI, automation, machine learning, what it's encouraging us to do is think more.
Okay.
Right? So we're going to be required for roles and for jobs that require us to think more and give a bit more of a direction as opposed to stamping things. The menial task will end or will be reduced, and what we'll need to do is upskill ourselves and actually say the value we add is more strategic or more visionary than a computer could give, because all the computers are doing is looking at what we're doing and actually making predictions on what we're going to do based on data, right? We could do it would just take us longer.
Yes.
Right? But it doesn't make a decision for you. It could make a prediction, but doesn't make a decision to say this is the right thing to do or not. And I think that's where it lies, is that higher order jobs are going to be required to direct this wave of artificial intelligence and machine learning, etc., that is helping do away with the menial tasks.
Sure. For me, I feel like it's a bit of both. I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I've seen entire trading floors being wiped out, where algorithms are executing trades and making those decisions. You obviously plug in the inputs to say, I'm comfortable with this level of risks, this kind of pricing. If you find value, trade, whether it's buying or selling. Simple as that. But there's an interesting book called AI Superpowers by Kai Fu Lee, who is seen as like the godfather of AI. And he speaks about how important empathy and passion and jobs that require that are going to be. Which is interesting. Right now we're seeing them as like lower, menial. No one wants to be a caregiver for old people. But he predicts that in the future the roles are going to swap. That those roles are going to become much more important. And the more empathetic you are, the more passionate you are, the more happy you are, and look for happiness and look to bring happiness in your world, the more valuable you're going to be in this world of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the likes. In your world, when you're dealing with brands and big organizations, I mean, those softer things are very difficult to speak about.
Yeah.
You want the hard numbers to say, this is going to bring me this market share, this is going to bring this revenue, this is going to deliver X, Y, and Z. But how important is to do meaningful work? How important it is to have empathy for people? How important it is to do things that you enjoy?
Yeah. So human-to-human interaction and understanding is probably the biggest differentiator between teams, businesses that do well and teams that don't, right? If you could get an organization thinking in a similar way, using all the individual talents and effort to drive a specific goal, that's where you win. It's like looking at the best soccer teams play together, right? You've got individuals who are amazing, but getting them to gel, that's where it lies. That's where the magic lies. And that's the same in businesses, right? So understanding people becomes even more important because that's the tool that you use to unlock that cohesion between one another, that understanding that if I pass the ball there, you're going to run.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It becomes that unsaid link between the people. And that link is actually what drives businesses forward. Businesses don't exist because of the hard metrics. And I mean, yes, they report back on that stuff, but that's not a result of, that's a result of what people have done. And the better they are at doing that together, the more advantageous they're going to be in the market, the more the results are going to be driven. You tend to see that the top companies, in terms of where people enjoy working, tend to be the ones that are making the most money as well. That isn't a surprise, and that isn't a mistake either. The reason it's not is because people drive that. And you're right when you say that empathy and the human-to-human interaction is going to become more and more valuable, because I think we're sort of reaching the end of our hard management phase in terms of big corporates and what's going to drive results. Yes, you'll drive efficiencies through that. Headcount and cutting people and reducing salaries and this will always drive efficiencies instantly. But long-term value isn't driven that way.
Sure, 100%. All right. Lastly, for someone who is watching this video and is listening to what you're saying, and maybe they had this itch that they want to venture out, whether it's entrepreneurship or whether they're working in a corporate and they've got these brand ideas. In your experience, whether it's life lessons or whether it's real insights that you've learned that help grow businesses, grow brands, what kind of advice would you give them, to say, if I want to get started, if I want to build a brand like Hansa Pilsner, if I want to, be a disruptor in the market, what kind of message would you give to individuals and businesses to help them?
So learn, use the free resources, learn as much as you can, do it as often as you can. Through talking to people, through free resources as well. I think the other big thing is planning, right? And don't overdo the plan, don't overthink it, just have a vision, right? And make it something that you'll be able to look back on in 3 or 6 months and say, okay, I've achieved that, or I've made steps towards achieving that, right? So write it down, make a commitment some way, right? Don't just make it your own personal goal, right?
Yeah, I like that.
And I think the other thing is be willing to fail. Do things that are uncomfortable, take that chance. It doesn't always work out, but you learn why it didn't work out through trying. Right? It's not going to go perfectly the first time you try it.
Sure. Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much for those insights. Guys, you need to watch this video about 10 times. I sat here and I literally had to hold myself in because of the wisdom and insights that were coming out of this man. Really, really profound, really, really powerful. Just my key message is stay close to your consumer. Stay as close as possible because it starts there and you can grow from there. And stay true to who you are. Be open. Just continuously learning. Just learn every day from yourself, from others, from books, from all the free tools that are available. Free. Mahala, gratis. You don't have to pay a damn thing. So learn, and fail. Fail better, fail forward, fail small, fail as often as you can, because that is a true sign of learning. Maphale Moloi, thank you so much. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification to stay updated with all the content we'll be putting out. Hit that like button, drop your comments, share this with your world. Switch on if you're not online. like I keep trying to tell you, promise you, it's gonna be a movie. One love.